Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Started with our introduction anyway. Welcome back, and welcome to everyone who on Zoom who joined us, or people who came in late. It's our custom to go around the room and say our names, and I'll introduce our speaker. I'll just start by welcoming the folks on Zoom: Greg, Marvin, Bob, Tom, Kai, Gary, John, Daniel, Richard, Steve, Bernie, Lise, Joe, John, Don, Jim, Frisco, Andres, and Harley. Welcome on Zoom. My name is Grisha. I'm Gary.
John.
I'm George.
I'm Tom. My name is Jeff.
Jerry.
Kimberly.
Matthew.
Bill.
Kevin.
Ray.
I'm Brad.
Jack. My name is Mark.
Ricky.
Tony.
Jan.
Marcus.
Well, welcome everyone, and my pleasure to introduce David Lewis, who is a longtime friend of our Sangha. David Lewis has been following the Dharma path for 50 years and has a degree in contemplative religious studies. He teaches at several Buddhist Sanghas around the Bay Area and offers a weekly meditation group for seniors, currently on Zoom, at Open House, which is a nonprofit that serves LGBTQI plus seniors. He's always happy to return to the Gay Buddhist Fellowship, where he gave his first Dharma talk in 2008.
Thank you, Grisha. It's great to be back. It's always great to be back at GBF. There's faces here I've been seeing for more than 25 years. I think I might have said this last time. I don't know, I have some cognitive impairment, so I forget what I said last time. But I read my talks more than I used to, especially if it's a relatively new talk, because of mild cognitive impairment. It's not that I forget about what I'm talking about. I forget what the next sentence is, or I forget a quote that I've been using for 20 years. I see some nodding heads. I think there's some empathy for that in this room. So in the Q&A, I'll be much more spontaneous. So it's really special being here live. A number of sanghas where I share the Dharma and attend are still on Zoom and still don't meet in person, and it's just an altogether different experience to be here live. It's such a powerful and empowering experience to sit together in Sangha. I've spoken before at GBF, I know I've mentioned this before, about how there's 3 different ways that we gain wisdom at Sangha, or learn something. The first is when we sit in silence, just being with our own direct experience. The second way that we gain wisdom in Sangha is by listening to a Dharma talk. We take information in from outside, from a teacher. And the third way is we have a discussion or Q&A or reflection, and we share with each other after the Dharma talk. They're all good ways of cultivating wisdom, which is why we make space for all 3 in Sangha. And hopefully we do that in life as well. I sometimes ask people, and I'm not going to ask you to put your hand up, but I've asked this question here before, like, which do you prefer? Which part of Sangha do you prefer? Do you like the meditation? Do you like the Dharma talk? Or do you prefer the reflection and discussion? There's not a right answer to that. You just kind of park that in the back of your mind. Feel free to comment on that afterwards. But I can tell you from having asked that question in different sanghas for Westerners for a number of years now, that we kind of tend to prefer, we Westerners tend to prefer Dharma talks and discussion over gaining wisdom through meditation. We Westerners have been conditioned to learn by doing, by study, by discussion, through intellectual effort. And I think this is why we have an innate preference for understanding through intellectual activity. We highly value thinking. So not thinking or de-emphasizing thoughts sometimes can make us a little uncomfortable. The Buddha included thinking in his list of sense pleasures because we really enjoy it. We really enjoy thinking. We gravitate towards thoughts, even when we're trying not to. Anybody notice that this morning? You're gravitating towards thinking, even though thinking, oh, I shouldn't be doing this. I would go so far as to say it's a common addiction, thinking. So we don't meditate to eliminate thoughts. We meditate to develop a different relationship with thoughts. So I'm not saying we should be abandoning thoughts in meditation. Thoughts happen. One of the things that differentiates the Buddha's path is its emphasis on direct experience over thoughts as a path to wisdom. He recognized that thinking can often get in the way of simply abiding in the present moment, which is where we find peace and also where we experience true understanding and reality. Thich Nhat Hahn said, understanding does not arise as a result of thinking. It is a result of a long process of conscious awareness. Sometimes understanding can be translated into thoughts, but thoughts are too limited to carry much understanding. That's Thich Nhat Hahn. So that's what makes the practice of meditation so important in our tradition. 3 of the steps on the Eightfold Path address meditation. So mindfulness and concentration are not optional in our tradition. But as I said, for many of us Westerners, trusting our inner wisdom by simply abiding in the present moment and noticing what arises can be the most challenging of those 3 wisdom practices. Due to a lifetime of educational conditioning, we value teachings and discussion more than direct experience. Some people, especially non-practitioners, some people cannot imagine simply sitting quietly and paying attention can have any value, especially when we notice what we notice when we sit quietly just seems like an annoying cacophony of nonsense. People find their direct experience challenging because, at least in the beginning, we have trouble seeing how it can have any value. We don't trust simple awareness. The Tibetan teacher Kalu Rinpoche satirizes what he calls the 4 faults of awareness. He says, awareness, or mindfulness, he says, is so close you can't see it, so deep you can't fathom it, so simple you can't believe it, so good you can't accept it. So it's the task of Dharma teachers to promote direct experience as something worth paying attention to. And it's up to us practitioners to train our minds to settle and notice what we are experiencing rather than what we are thinking. And that noticing, by the way, includes noticing that we're thinking, noticing that we're having thoughts. Instead of getting caught up in the content of our thoughts, we just notice, oh, thoughts are coming and going, arising and passing. That's their nature. So again, we don't meditate to get rid of thinking, we meditate to change our relationship to thinking. Zen Master Dogen said, "You should cease from practice based on intellectual understanding, pursuing words and following after speech, and learn the backward step that turns your light inwardly to illuminate the self." As they say in the Zen tradition, a teacher is just a finger pointing at the moon. The moon representing natural wakefulness. The teachings are secondhand, while your direct experience is the reality of the moment. Burmese teacher U Thich Nhat says, "We tend to get lost in concepts. We need to see the difference between the concepts we use to create a convincing mental picture of reality and reality itself." The Buddha's teachings can be understood intellectually, and that's a satisfying and worthwhile activity. But it's not the same thing as experiencing reality in the present moment, just through our six senses. The Zen teacher, local Zen teacher, has passed away, Blanche Hartman, said, "We lose something very vital in our life when it's more important to us to be the one who knows than it is to be awake to what's happening." I think that part of our discomfort or distrust with natural awareness, which is called rigpa in the Tibetan tradition, is that it arises as a result of not doing. And as I said, we Westerners are doers. We even make meditation something to do, something that we expect will produce a result of some sort. People often report that they come to meditation so that they can have a peaceful mind. But a peaceful mind is really just a side effect that sometimes arises with meditation. If we strive to access it, it will elude us. And if we don't immediately find it, we might give up. But there's another benefit to sitting quietly with our direct experience that we sometimes discount because we don't trust it. And that is wisdom. The wisdom of seeing the true nature of things, just as they are, including your most deeply conditioned habits of mind. This is U Thich Nhat again, who said, "In meditation, we need to switch from doing to recognizing. In this way, you will slowly understand what is actually happening, and this will enable you to let go of the old paradigm." The much desired peace of mind comes only after we see the emptiness of thinking and striving and let go of all of that, simply resting in awareness. The Tibetans use the metaphor of the sky to describe this. They have a lot of sky in Tibet. They say that natural awareness is like a clear blue sky, but sometimes it's obscured by clouds. If we fixate on the clouds, we will fail to see the clear blue sky. But if we sit quietly and notice the nature of the sky and the nature of clouds, we will see that the clouds are constantly moving and changing, while the sky is always steady. It's radiant. Natural awareness is the radiant mind, and you already have it. You don't have to do anything to get it. The clouds, of course, represent disturbances, or thoughts, or stories, or wanting things to be other than they are, or grasping for the pleasant, or avoiding the unpleasant. That's the cacophony of a busy mind. And a busy mind is not really a problem, as long as we just recognize it as a busy mind. It's our resistance to that causes us to suffer. All we need to do is let go of that resistance, which is the message of the third noble truth, the end of suffering. The great mid-20th century Thai meditation teacher, Ajahn Chah, offered this quote, which you've probably heard before. Dharma teachers love to share it. Ajahn Chah said, "If you let go a little, you'll have a little peace. If you let go a lot, you will have a lot of peace. If you let go completely, you will have complete peace. And your struggles with the world will come to an end." A lot of times people leave off the last line of that quote. They just talk about letting go. But I just think that's a profoundly beautiful promise that he says, if you let go, your struggles with the world will come to an end. Wouldn't that be something? So this practice that we share is more about letting go of what gets in the way of peace and happiness than it is about getting something. The Buddha didn't gain a thing in his long lifetime of practice. He just uncovered what was already there. He noticed the nature of things. This simple truth is what we Westerners have trouble trusting sometimes. Because we are doers, we believe that everything worthwhile comes as a result of doing and striving. So letting go, or renunciation, does not come easily for us, at least until we learn to allow it. Renunciation is not about giving anything up. It's about letting go of what gets in the way of a peaceful mind, of a happy mind. Recognizing that the clouds are just passing through. The opposite of doing is being. The opposite of striving is relaxing and receiving. Here's U Tejaniya one more time. Quote. We can read 1,000 words and try to reason our way towards balancing the mind and revealing understanding. But ultimately, we must do the work and create the conditions for this to happen. The meditating mind is beyond words, beyond reason, beyond self. By doing the work, I think he's referring to just letting go and accepting things as they are. And for most of us, this does feel kind of like a training program, like learning a new language or learning to play a musical instrument. This is why we call it practice. Munindraji said, if you want to understand the mind, sit down and observe it. It's as simple as that. If you want to understand the mind, sit down and observe it. We can only come to trust that this is true by sitting down and checking it out in our own experience. One of the Buddha's most famous invitations, most famous quotes in Pali is when he said, Ehi Passiko. Ehi Passiko in Pali means see for yourself. Come see for yourself. You don't have to take my word for anything or any other teacher. Just check out your own experience. So for most people, this is an incremental process that unfolds over time. We call it a gradual awakening. It requires both diligence and practice. Neuroscientists that say that in doing so, what we're doing is we're carving new neural pathways. We which is why it's kind of difficult to chart our progress in practice. Wisdom usually isn't a sudden flash of insight, nor is it intellectual understanding. It's a gradual awakening. On the other hand, it's always at hand. If awareness is present, wisdom is present. Even the very first time you meditate, there's benefit. If awareness is present, wisdom is present. So, what wisdom do we receive by sitting down and observing the mind? What is this wisdom? Primarily, in our tradition, it's framed as the three characteristics of existence that we've talked about before. Dukkha, anicca, and anatta in Pali. We come to see, first of all, that everything changes. Anybody notice that in your meditation this morning? Everything was just constantly changing. The mind states were changing, the thoughts were changing, your body was changing. You want to change the position of your way you cross your legs. Everything changes. So sometimes that which annoys us most in meditation practice is exactly what we need to recognize and accept. Oh, everything changes. Anicca is the Pali word for impermanence. Anicca. And because everything is constantly changing, everything is therefore inherently unreliable. Right? This is the noble truth of dukkha. Life, the mind, the world, other people, they're all unreliable. If everything is changing and therefore unreliable, it cannot be mere mind. It's just changing phenomena. It's not personal. That goes for this body and this perceived self that I've constructed. Anatta, or anatta, is the Pali word for not self. So anicca, anatta, dukkha, impermanence, unreliability, and not self. These are insights, not beliefs. It's not dogma. They're the nature of reality. Ehipassiko. See for yourself. Check it out in your own direct experience. So the other thing we notice when we sit quietly is our reactivity. Or maybe more often than not, we notice our reactivity first before we start having insights into the nature of our impermanence. We just notice reactivity. And if we pay attention, we'll see how we generate our own dissatisfaction. Nobody's making us reactive. Nobody can make you angry. Nobody can make you bored. Nobody can make you frustrated. We do that all by ourselves. Which is why Joseph Goldstein, great American meditation teacher, says that we're 100% responsible for our own suffering. What he's saying is we're responsible for our own reactivity. He's referring to our reactivity to the unreliability of our lives. But then he goes on to add, so don't waste your suffering. By this, he means that there's a lesson in seeing how we generate reactivity. And that lesson is the key to freeing ourselves from suffering. The famous parable of the two arrows teaches us that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. The good news is that walking the path of wisdom and compassion may be easier than you think. One of my favorite Buddhist quotes is from Adyashanti, who stipulates that it's not what you think, but much, much less. It's not what you think, but much, much less. We only have to sit quietly and receive our experience without trying to manage it, control it in the present moment. Like any skill, it gets easier with practice. Every moment of mindfulness conditions further moments of mindfulness. The goal is not to become a good meditator. The goal is to cultivate natural awareness in every moment of our lives. Meditation, formal meditation practice is just practice. The goal is to bring that natural awareness to every moment of our lives. Lama Tubten Yeshe says, just understanding your mind, how attachment and desire arise, how ignorance arises, where emotions come from, just that gives so much happiness and peace. So you can even be happy noticing dukkha, noticing suffering, noticing reactivity in your experience. If in the noticing of it you realize that there's wisdom. On a retreat once, I heard a teacher respond to a question by replying, "The answer to every Dharma question is to get back on the cushion." In other words, keep training the mind to be present, to be mindful of whatever is arising in the moment. The more time you devote to practicing being mindful, the greater the benefit. You already have everything you need to wake up. The answer lies within. The Buddha reminds us that it is just within this fathom-long body, with its perception and intellect, that I declare there is a world, the origin of the world, the cessation of the world, and the path of practice leading to cessation. You already have it in this body. Or, as Tsongkhapa, another Tibetan Rinpoche, put it, the human body, at peace with itself, is more precious than the rarest gem. Cherish your body. It is yours this one time only. The human form is won with great difficulty. It's easy to lose. All worldly things are brief, like lightning in the sky. This life, you must know, as the tiny splash of a raindrop, a thing of beauty that disappears even as it comes into being. Therefore, set your goal. Make use of every day and night to achieve it. So, thank you for your kind attention. That's my talk, and I hope I left plenty of time for discussion or questions and answers. I forgot to bring a watch. You're going to have to tell me when time's up. But please, does anybody have a comment, a question, or a reflection, or something that happened in your direct experience in meditation this morning that it's worth commenting on? Please.
I was listening to your talk about the clouds and the sky being permanent. I kind of was wondering, the universe and out there, when you're out there, it's all like plain. I haven't been out there, but I'm just saying, in my mind, a lot of times I lay under the apple tree and look up in the sky and see the white clouds, or I'm looking out and they're moving around, and I'm looking at different formations of them and everything, and just letting go and enjoying the flow. of everything, not having to hold on to it, but just to see it move. And it's alive, like everything in nature is kind of like alive. Even the molecules of the oxygen in the air and all that other stuff. And just being present with it and allowing it to exist and enjoying it as a part of life. I don't know if that was where taking it too far out there, but...
Yep, that's it. Thank you for that. That's lovely. That's a beautiful description. And I think we could probably all relate to that. The beautiful thing is you put that so well that I think we can all remember sitting up, we can all understand sitting underneath an apple tree and just noticing the clouds passing by and relaxing and allowing and receiving. You can do the same thing with your mind in meditation, and you can have exactly the same response in meditation. That's can be one of the benefits of meditation, is when we just allow it all to flow, just allow the cacophony of the mind, all those thoughts and worries and emotions, and to just pass by without getting attached, as you described so beautifully, and let it all be. That's what keeps me. That's what motivates me. That's why I meditate. So.
You covered a lot of area in that speech.
Yeah, I hope I didn't complicate things.
No, so I feel comfortable.
Sometimes when the meditation ends, I kind of think, how about if we just meditate for another half an hour instead of doing Dharma talk? But it's all good. Anyone else?
Steve online. Go ahead, Steve.
Thank you for your talk. I love the, how should I say, the simplicity of your talk, yet it was so profound at the same time. So I know you mentioned that the goal of meditation is not a peaceful mind, it's to be in natural awareness of every moment. And so I was struck by your use of the word unreliable, and I guess I want to try to bring those together. So what do you exactly mean by what influences or moments are unreliable, and versus being mindful of the moment and then you have clarity? So talk a little bit more about that, if you will.
Sure. Unreliable is one possible definition of dukkha, which is the first noble truth. Dukkha being, generally dukkha is defined as suffering. But suffering can be the unreliable nature of things as they arise, but suffering can also be a reactivity to that. So when I'm talking about unreliability as dukkha, unreliability is for instance, when we sit and everything is changing in our experience, or maybe just in our daily life, everything is changing. We're getting older, we're losing friends, challenges arise. If we have resistance to that, then that unreliability really bothers us. We think that shouldn't be happening. I shouldn't be getting sick. I shouldn't be getting old. I don't deserve this. I don't want to be losing my friends. I don't like it. That's resistance to unreliability. Unreliability in itself is not a terrible thing. It's just the nature of things, because everything changes. So you can go either way with unreliability, depending on whether you're resisting it or reactive to it, or whether you're just kind of noticing the changing of clouds. Does that help? Does that kind of answer your question?
It does, very much so. I understand more fully the relationship.
Okay. Thanks for the question. Unreliability you don't often hear as a definition of dukkha, but I really kind of like it. I like to sometimes sit back and observe that, hey, life is unreliable. We're constantly being tossed curveballs. That's life. I saw an interview with a cognitive scientist of some sort who said the purpose of something to the effect of the purpose of life is adapting to change. Adapting to loss, that's what he said. The purpose of life is learning to adapt to loss. And that's just kind of his summing up of psychological science. So, something to reflect on, something to ponder. Did we have another question?
Yeah, Luis?
Yes, sir. With Luis. Thank you for the talk. Could you talk a little bit more about the third component? You said dukkha, Nietzsche, and there was the third one that you defined as not self. Is it the realization that what I observe is not truly me? What is that not self?
That's a big topic. of the three, what we call characteristics of existence, impermanence, dukkha, or unreliability, and not self is the one that we kind of have the hardest time to intellectualize. But another way of putting it is that nothing's personal. What happens to you in life is often conditioned, random events, and we think, oh, that's about me, but it's not. Say somebody that I just before Sangha this morning, I was talking to a friend of mine, a relative in another state, who had taken a fall and hurt herself. Not enough that she needs surgery, but she's in a lot of pain. And both she and I, in the course of the conversation, we're taking it very personally. Like, she was like, "Why does this happen to me? Why am I having this pain?" And I'm thinking, "Oh, well, how can I help? What can I do?" In another state from this telephone conversation, but there's not much I can do, and she's experiencing pain as a result of the conditions of having fallen down. It wasn't her fault; it was an accident. It's not personal, but we tend to personalize. We think, why me? Why is this happening to me? And we don't necessarily need to go there. We can alleviate some of our suffering by not personalizing some of the experiences we have in the world. I could say I could give a whole talk about not self, but we don't have time today. There's many, many different aspects of it. But in a nutshell, that's what I'm talking about this morning. Is that helpful?
You.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Anybody in the room? Yeah. Tom online again. Go ahead, Tom.
Hi, David. Thank you so much for yet another rich talk. You had me realizing that there's this paradox that I sort of wrestle with that goes something like this. So I want to realize the present moment, but I don't want to chase, this peaceful mind state necessarily. It can arise, but it's not the goal. And yet the cessation of thinking centers on the fact that most of my thinking is about the past, everything that's led up to this moment, and future concerns, aspirations, whatever. So most everything, except for a very narrow amount of my thinking, is in the past or the present. And so the paradox is sort of like to stop the past and present, to be in the past and the future, to be in the present moment, but not chase stopping all thinking. I mean, I don't know. I mean, that probably sounds a little wacky, but where's the balance? What are your thoughts on not chasing, but not doing? I mean, I don't know.
That's a great question. And you're absolutely right. Most of our thoughts are about the past or the future. However, thinking happens in the present moment. Thinking is one of the sense doors. So how we work with thinking in the present moment is instead of latching on to our thoughts and falling into the past or jumping into the future, how we deal with thinking in the present moment is to notice it like clouds. Just notice, oh, thinking is happening. Not the content, not getting caught up in the content, but simply in this present moment, thinking is happening, and smelling, and hearing. So sometimes in when I give meditation instructions, I include hearing as part of the instructions, is noticing in the present moment, what are you hearing right now? And without labeling it or without defining what the sound is, just letting sound speak. We can do that. We can if you play with that in your meditations, just notice sounds happening and just label them sounds, not fire truck, not garbage truck, not dog barking, but just sounds. That's relatively easy to do in meditation practice. What's a little bit more challenging, but it's exactly the same thing, is to do that with thoughts. Like, oh, that's just a thought. Thoughts are happening. Thoughts are coming and going. Coming and going. So that answers part of your question. The other part of your question that struck me is at the very beginning you talked about what you wanted and what you didn't want to happen in meditation practice. And that's worth paying attention to, the wanting. Wanting something to happen or something not to happen. That's striving, and I'm a striver. That's what I spent so many years in meditation trying to do it the right way and have a peaceful mind, and it only came with experience that I realized that, oh, I could just sit back and receive, relax and receive, and what I wanted before, is much more likely to arise when I'm relaxing and receiving than when I have an agenda in meditation.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is why we strive for non-self, right? I mean, we want to experience non-self, and yet that, we identify that as not thinking, right? And then we sort of chase it. So I understand what you're saying. Yeah. And maybe that's why, like you said, observing our thinking, but observing our breath is even closer, right? Because it's always there, and it's only happening in the present moment, which is why it's a great beginning place.
Absolutely. All of our 6 sense doors only happen in the present moment. And so, therefore, your 6 sense doors are really the only reality. Everything else is imagined. Everything else is filtered through your mind. So hearing happens in the present moment. Thinking, thoughts arising and coming happen in the present moment. Smelling, tasting, touch, the sense door of touch. I'm missing one.
So the thinking happens only in the present moment, but the content of the thinking, the thoughts, can be centered in the future or the past.
Right. When we get caught up in content, it carries us right into either the future or the past. And that in itself is a useful thing to notice in your meditation, to notice how many of your thoughts are about the future or the past. And we all know, probably from cognitive science, that memories are highly unreliable, so that the past is highly unreliable. And the future is even less reliable because it hasn't happened yet. It's imagined. So we're not dealing in the realm of reality for most of our thinking. We're in the past or we're in the future. So you're experiencing reality, the nature of things, when you're in the moment, when you're in the present moment, and that's the beauty of the present moment, which, Tom, I know you're well aware of.
Thank you, David. Thank you so much.
Sure.
And I'll just say something that comes to mind always when we're on the cushion, is the transition from cushion to life. And so, like Friday, I made a potentially life-altering mistake, and I can't change that. And my mind goes back there, and that's a little easier to be like, that's silly. Come back, like. You can't change the past, but the future, what I have to do, what could happen, that comes rushing in, and it's like, okay, well then, when do I think about it? If I'm the practicing, constantly practicing, coming back to now. I guess when there's when there is action to take, when do you start thinking about it? You know, like that's always my struggle, because my brain wants to tackle it right now in this quiet moment.
Yeah, that's what we do. And action is the English word for karma. Part of what you're talking about is karma. We can't change the past, but we can change the future. We can guide the future by how we act in the present moment. That's another talk. Please.
David, I noticed that you said that it might be helpful to notice if your thoughts tend to be the future versus the past. I was wondering if there's any utility in noticing the nature of what the thoughts are about, regardless of whether they're future or past.
Yeah, it really is. And I'm reluctant to encourage you to do that, but I know you're going to do it anyway, because we all do. Because the temptation is to get caught up in our thoughts. But it's really useful to notice our habits of mind, particularly. That's the phrase I like to use rather than thoughts. It's our habits of mind. Because, as one of my teachers likes to say, we all have a top 10 list. And our top 10 list is where we put 90% of our mental activity. Is, worrying about the same stuff over and over again, or being anxious about the same stuff over and over again, or nursing the same resentment, day after day after day. Mm-hmm. Those are just habits of mind. Conditions have habits of mind, and the more we chew on some old grievance, the more we condition it, the more that'll be our habit to come back to that. So that's by noticing our top 10 list, by noticing our most habitual habits of mind, that's when we can start, in the first place, recognizing them, and in the second place, realizing, I don't really have to stress out about whatever this issue is 30 times today. It's not benefiting me, because we do. We most of our thinking is the same stuff over and over again. So it's very useful to notice what your habits of mind are, and it's helpful in letting them go. Eventually, for one thing, they're boring. It's just the same old stuff, right?
Bob online has a question. Go ahead, Bob. How do you?
Thank you. I wanted to thank you for your talk, and the discussion that's happened made me think or realize that there might be Buddhist wisdom in songs that have become popular. In particular, I've looked at clouds from both sides now. When Bill somehow, it's clouds illusions, I recall. I really don't know clouds at all. So I want to thank you for that realization.
And we paved paradise and put in a parking lot. Of course, there's wisdom in music. There's wisdom in poetry. Thank you for pointing that out, Bob. It's so true. It's all good Dharma, whether we call it Dharma or not. Especially Joni Mitchell.
All right, it's about time to wrap up. Thank you for your talk. And at this time, we just have announcements. So can we hear from the host today?
I'm your host today. Please stay and enjoy the company of the Sangha. There are refreshments and hot water for tea. If you use a cup, please put it in the sink and I'll take care of it. I'll be going around with a Dharma bowl to accept contributions to cover our expenses. Your generosity is appreciated. Donations in the range of $10 to $20 help us on immediate expenses. This includes honorariums for the Dharma speakers, rent for this beautiful space, and our quarterly newsletter mailed mostly to people in prison. There's a newcomer sign-up sheet on the credenza. If you wish to be included and receive our Sangha membership directly, please sign up. And some members go out for lunch after the meeting. Everyone is welcome to join them. And they meet at the back of the front door at 12:30.
Thank you.
Well said.
Any other announcements? Okay. Would you like to do the dedication of merit your own, or should we?
No, I'd be happy to do it.
Okay, cool. We gather.
Well, we like to take a moment at the end of Sangha to acknowledge our time here together, our meditation time, our Dharma talk time, our discussion time, and acknowledge that this practice is beneficial. Even our practice at home on the meditation cushion alone is beneficial, not to ourselves, but to all beings, everybody you come in contact with. So in the same way that we wish for peace and ease in our own life, we wish for peace and ease for all beings. May all beings be safe from danger and harm. May all beings be healthy in body and mind. May all beings live with peace and ease and be free of suffering. May it be so. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.